and welcome as we call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jenks City Council. Today is Tuesday, May 4th of 2021. The time is 6 p.m. We do have a quorum present tonight, so we will be conducting the business of the city of Jenks. Mr. Macy, can you please verify our attendance, sir?
Isabel? Murray? Here. Klein? Here. Short?
Here.
OJ?
Here.
Kayla?
Here.
Mayor Box?
Here. Let the record reflect that Councilor Isabel is not in attendance this evening. Pastor, you said Pastor Smith, right? Okay. All right. He's not here. If you care to, bow your head and we'll pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve this great city. I thank you for all the staff that work hard and for all the firefighters that are here tonight as we celebrate International Firefighters Day. It is truly a blessing to serve. And I pray for this council, Lord, wherever there's pride and selfishness and self-motivation, Lord, that you would strip all that away and replace it with inspiration and new ideas and new motivation and creativity so we can move this city forward. We truly are blessed to work here. It's truly an honor to serve you. And we pray that everything we do bring glory and honor to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Actually, matter of fact, do we have any veterans in the audience? Have one? Okay, I'll lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an employee recognition this evening, and I believe, Chief, is this you or is this me? Okay, can you come forward and kind of give us a background since you are our senior commander?
Mayor, members of council, just want to take a moment today and have Emily Loveday come up. She was just recently voted Best in the Burbs for Tulsa for Best Firefighters.
Can you tell us a little about that nomination process and how big a deal is this?
What I know about it, it's all peer nominates them, and it's a voted process through it. I think there were about, if I remember right, there's 8 or 10 people listed that were being voted for, and she came in the top number of votes.
Awesome. Congratulations. You know, I think the best part of event recognition is when you're recognized by your peers. So I'd like to see if we can get a picture with all your colleagues, and we'll go ahead and do that. Come on, guys. You look sharp. Yeah, dressed up so we can get a picture, right?
Yeah. Where's your sash? Second place, sash.
Is she gonna? Can she take you on CrossFit Day?
All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Congratulations on the job well done. It's such a small token of the city's. Hopefully you like that.
Thank you. I love it.
If not, there's plenty of fat sugars out there. Work out.
That's perfect. Can I get one for you? That's funny.
The one thing I miss about my military days is all the hazing from the hecklers in the back. Okay, at this point, we are welcome to citizens' comments. If anyone in the audience would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda this evening, you have an opportunity. Please come forward. We will recognize you. Okay, thank you very much. On to new business. Item number 1 is the consent agenda. Is there any motions from the floor to approve the consent agenda?
And staff would recommend pulling item E. We'll have that at the next council meeting.
Okay. Is there any motions on the floor to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item E?
So moved.
Second. We have a proper motion and a proper second. Let's vote, please, sir.
Murray? Yes. Klein,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes. Item number 2, we'll go ahead and lay that for next week. Item number 3, request to approve ordinance number 1552, amending Chapter 5 of the Jenks City Code, Business and Operations, to add a new Article 17, Shared Active Transportation, providing for a permit process for shared active transportation, small vehicle systems, commonly known as e-scooters and bicycles. This is page 81 in your packet if you're following along, and our city attorney, Teresa Nowlin, will present to us.
Hi, Mayor, members of council. Most of this is stated in the memo, but the city since May 19 has been operating under an exclusive pilot program agreement with Lime scooters. And the police department reports that we've had no major problems with Lime. And so that will be expiring at the end of this month. And so the next step would be, in order for us to regulate scooters, to adopt an ordinance. This ordinance proposes that there be annual permits. There would be an application fee as well as 2 separate fees per scooter. The application fee is a one-time fee per vendor per year. And then a $20 fee and a $30 fee per vehicle. The maximum fleet size is 100 vehicles. And my understanding, talking to potential vendors, the 100 is kind of a surge that normally there would not be 100 vehicles here in Jenks. If anyone ever wanted to propose a docked system, that's not what we have right now. We have dockless scooters, the Lime scooters are, and as well Bird, who has expressed interest, also has dockless scooters. But if anyone ever wanted docked, that's where there's an actual station that bikes or scooters go into. That would have to go through the full right-of-way permit process, like go with site plans and lots of oversight through engineering and planning. So that could happen, but it would go through a lot of oversight where that would happen. And the operators must have a staff person dedicated to the city of Jenks and have 24-hour customer service. There are standards for how quickly a vehicle would have to be moved. If there was a safety hazard within 2 hours, if it's broken down, I think the time period is generally 24 hours. And permits can be terminated if there's a problem. And that's kind of the general rundown on the ordinance. If you have questions about scooters themselves and the general operation, Rob Greenleaf with Lime is here tonight. He can answer your questions. I also included some literature from Bird. And I believe Chief Arthur is here or will be here shortly, he says, in case you have traffic safety kind of questions.
Thank you. Anybody on the council care to be recognized? Anybody on the right side of the council care to be recognized for comment?
I would like to say there is a cap on the number of scooters. I want to talk about that a little bit. To be said about each one can only have so many. If I understood everything correctly, Lime can have 100, Bird can have 100, and that's all they can have. So the city would only, they would have a total of 200 of these scooters if each business had.
The maximum.
So we'd have 200 scooters running around.
That is correct, as the maximum. My understanding is, and probably Mr. Greenleaf could talk more, but on a regular day, I don't think that capacity would be met, but that is as it is said.
Well, I just think it's something to think about though, because we're putting something in writing that can happen instead of say they can each have 50. We can always add to an ordinance, but we can't take away from an ordinance without a big number ordeal. And my thinking may be wrong, but that's just the way I look at it.
So you're concerned with the number of 200?
I think giving 2 companies the freedom to add in 100 scooters apiece. We have a small town, we're not Tulsa. I think that's kind of an overkill. I would even like to say cut it in half. Because we can always add to, like I said, we can't take away. But that's a whole lot of scooters running around town. for giving them the ability to have that. That's just my thoughts.
Councilor Rose, Vice Mayor rather, any comments?
Well, I agree with Councilor Lynn as far as that's a lot of scooters, but on a really day-to-day basis, if they could answer how many do we have around the city at any given time, would it be helpful?
Sure, Rob, can we talk about how many you have and how many you would want?
First of all, thank you for having me. Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you.
Well, again, everybody. So to answer.
You could just state your name.
Oh, sorry.
The
My
record.
name is Rob Greenleaf and I live at 2133 Northwest 9th Street in Oklahoma City. So the data that we share will show that although our cap was much higher, clearly during the winter time or slower times of the year, we maybe on the average, at least for the last several months, maybe even going farther, had 50 to 60, maybe 75 at most. When demand requires it, we, since we're right across the river with our postal warehouse, can very quickly supply demand. We see that in real time. But if, for example, it's a Monday, we're going to probably keep 50 scooters or whatever that magic number is for that day. And the rest of those scooters, if we have extras that are available, will be out in Tulsa. Or realistically, if they're downtown, maybe we get more rides per scooter than if they were sitting. Another issue with us, that's just letting all of our scooters sit here. For example, in your example, if we just let 100 scooters sit here, not only will it not generate money that it could be elsewhere, but it ends up having a bad effect. Everybody sees scooters sitting around, albeit maybe they're nicely lined up, but there's still now 100 scooters or a lot of scooters sitting around doing nothing. It becomes an eyesore and clutter. So our natural reaction would be to pull those scooters and put them in other markets. And with all the launches that we're doing this year, I launched Guthrie this weekend, El Reno this Friday. We already have not a shortage of scooters, but sort of a delay of new scooters coming in. So I'll gladly sort of see where scooters aren't working and pull them. Another point to your concern, I would love to request or have the council consider, yes, another vendor, but maybe splitting 50-50 or 100 scooters each wouldn't make sense to start. Potentially also allowing for this new vendor to go through a similar process we did. Maybe they start with a slightly lower cap. And we too would effectively be at 100, maybe they're at 50 or 75. If that were the concern in terms of how these scooters are going to be managed once they are out there. I would hope that by now we're known in terms of how we respond to benefit scooters, and that could reflect on how the allocations are divided up. And lastly, if this were to happen today and we get 100 scooters, chances are you would only see those 100 scooters on busier days. On busier days, those 100 scooters aren't sitting around. They're all, potentially ending up somewhere, but then once written down to a very low percent, we're picking them up or a juicer's picking them up to go charge them. So there, any other questions or?
Any comments from the left side?
Is this a one,
Yes.
on average, what is your daily usage during that average month, not winter?
In terms of the time frame or how often the scooters are being ridden in a given day? I'll just give you those answers. Let's say it's their peak season, middle of summer. Usually, even though the weather is warm, you'll definitely see more rides during the day, just because generally people are not in school or at work more often so than normal seasons. But usually the rides are happening Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 9, 10 p.m. People get off work. And then weekends, yes, all day long. And that's another reason why having the ability to flex to 100 or higher or whatever it ends up being is great, because midday on Saturday, we might realize, oh, the scooters and Jenks are going really quick, which means that come 2 p.m., half those scooters have been picked up, they're being charged, but they don't come back up at night. Maybe there's a concert in town. So we will flex to 100 or whatever our cap is. But of course, if it's not showing that those are being ridden today, so there might be situations where we'll pull scooters and bring them to Tulsa because of Tulsa Tough, the Ironman event. And we'll need all the scooters that they see. But it's what you would expect. There potentially isn't much of a commuter, use, but come 6 p.m. or all day long on a sunny Saturday, a lot of river riding or across the bridge.
Any other comments on the left? So, Mr. Greenleaf, what's the likelihood that there would be 100 scooters in Jenks at one time? It doesn't seem likely with the scenarios.
Not literally at one time, but there is a very good likelihood that throughout the course of a Saturday, we will have cycled through 100 scooters.
Cycle through, which means the juicers are picking them up, bringing them back. So that's,
At all times, our cap will remain at 100. But let's say for whatever reasons, it starts off at 50. And then as we realize, oh, we missed this event that's happening in Jenks, we spike it to 100. But because of the fact that we're spiking it, there's demand and ridership. So more than likely, it's never going to be 100 scooters on the ground. And if it is, it'll be for a few hours before they start picking up, since the latter scooters are now starting to die.
so PGA comes to town, Tulsa Tough, you guys will come and take scooters out of Jenks and use them for as overflow and larger.
That would be a drastic example. I mean, in this case, I've got scooters prepared for these things.
Okay.
If I were to miss something, sure. And if they weren't being ridden in Jenks, it's a Thursday, there's nothing much going on here. And I noticed that for some reason, BOK Center is going off, we will relocate scooters, yes.
Okay.
Or rather, I think the correct thing is scooters probably would be at the lower capacity, let's say 50 to begin with, and the other ones would be sitting in our warehouse. So more than likely, rather than pulling from the streets, they would just be pulled from the warehouse where they were sitting, waiting for usage.
Does that give you some satisfaction, Councilor Lynn?
Yeah, I like that, but I'm gonna talk about liability now. Should an accident should happen, who's gonna be liable? Are you gonna be liable for accidents that would happen on the scooter?
I am not 100%, well, it really depends on the situation, what the accident was. So yes, the way I understand how things work, if the accident happened because of a malfunction of our product, after the tire falls off or something doesn't work properly, then in that case, yes. But with the user agreement, the rider has signed away certain rights in terms of being able to, if they were to get into an accident, it would be treated differently than if you got a back accident on your bike or a rental product. The situation would be.
Okay, the rider signs away, releases you, the company, your company, of any liability. Is the city of Jenks included in the release of liability? So do we have a dual?
We have a release of liability and an indemnification in the ordinance and in the permit application. There's an agreement that Lime will indemnify us should any claim be brought against us for Lime's malfunctions, negligence.
So, I mean, do we have anything that the rider that protects us, the city, should the rider have an accident?
I don't know that there's anything in an agreement, but the law would protect us from things that are not our negligence. I mean, we're protected both by the governmental tort claim and by the fact that if we didn't cause it, the law of negligence, the law of torts, the Governmental Tort Claims Act. The city is only liable in tort for its own negligence, not for the negligence of any other party, not for reckless acts or criminal acts. And there's also a cap on liability for those things.
There been any
And
lawsuits?
so far, we have had
Any lawsuits?
tort claims.
Any lawsuits in Tulsa County that you know of? Yeah, the review.
Not that I personally know.
Not that I know.
You aware of the case of the somewhat famous young man who smashed his teeth on the curb after falling off the Lime scooter downtown?
I did hear,
Was there a lawsuit and that claim that you are aware of?
not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
because I would be involved and or notified if
Okay.
our legal team was requesting information about certain supervisor.
In your professional opinion, do you have any concerns about liability as it relates to disagreement with Lime?
No.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, and I'm sorry, I wish I had researched this a little. I got some material from when we went through this before at home. Tulsa has, and maybe you will know, Tulsa does have some form of release of responsibility built in with their contract with Lime. Where at the same time that, and again, I'm going to pull from a year ago. But there's a built-in release of responsibility for any accidents that happen on the line scooter. Yes. Are you familiar with that?
That is how I understand it works, but if there's a specific thing that was agreed between Tulsa and us, absolutely, I would be more than happy to help Teresa find that language so we can include it.
And our ordinance is based off Tulsa's ordinances, so it has that same, our ordinance is based off Tulsa's ordinance. So we have that same indemnification and hold harmless language that Tulsa has.
I just want to make sure.
And I made sure that I've also now put it in the permit application, so they have to sign with an authorized corporate rep and
That
everything.
releases the city of
Yes.
liability.
Counselor Lynn, if we want to turn to page 8, section 517-11, if you guys want to take a moment to get comfortable with where we're at in this discussion.
Okay.
Comfort level higher? Is your comfort level high on this? Okay. Any other concerns from the rest of the council? And Mrs. Nowlin, this ordinance, should we choose to pass it, is pertains to both Lime, who the only relationship we have is with Lime. We don't even know Bird, but we're passing an ordinance that allows Bird to come in tomorrow and drop off 100 scooters.
They would have to go through a full permit application
Okay.
process. Then that application, our plan here, I'll step up to the mic. And even Lime will have to now do a permit, I assume. Well, we're getting to their expiration at the end of May. I'm sure we'll work through the permit process, but Bird or any other operator would have to work through this full permit application process, provide us what we need. The plan is that we'll involve some interactive discussions with the police department, with Tanner Rush, who's kind of coordinating our permits. They'll probably talk about downtown. They'll talk about where's okay to park, where is it not, and safety issues. We have a draft permit that has a spot for notes and agreements that the city will sign off and the permittee will sign off on. So Bird can't come in here tomorrow. They'll have to go through the full process and satisfy our requirements, as well as these informal discussions about safety and locations.
Are you of the opinion that Bird will not need to go through the 1-year pilot process the way Lime did? It seems like they're capitalizing on the work that we've already done with Lime. How do you feel about that?
I think that Lime has benefited from this really 2-year permit process, as well as us. You know, we know now that we haven't had major issues. I think we probably learned, and they learned, of course, that Lime has the benefit of knowing the good spots and the spots that don't work, and some of that learning the city well. But I'm not too concerned, but no, I mean, this has been an exclusive agreement with Lime for 2 years, and to allow someone else to potentially get a shot at it. It is, I mean, this is kind of the model that Tulsa has gone with. And like with Lime, when we first talked about this, we had already had some Lime scooters ending up in Jenks even before we had an arrangement with Lime. Bird is in Tulsa, and we could have that issue too, that they may end up in Jenks anyway. So
Under the scenario that a mall decides to be built somewhere in the city of Jenks in our future, we can simply amend this to increase the capacity of the 2 carriers, assuming
certainly, and there is also a vehicle in here where they can apply to us for more, but that doesn't mean we have to grant it. But yes, we can come back and amend the ordinance and
to go up or down.
go up or down, or we can even look at another pilot program.
So no matter what, in any scenario of buyer's remorse, we have an easy amendment process to modify this.
Certainly, like any other ordinance, you know, these scooters they're ready to go. So it's not like somebody's building the building. It's a little more changeable, and that's by design of the program. This is a modifiable, mobile, ever-changing industry.
More comments from council on the left. Councilor Murray.
I think the questions have been asked on a lot of it's important and stuff on it, but I think mine is a little bit of just driving around Tulsa and seeing some of these laying on the side of the road or kicked over and things like that. How often do you go around, and I see your guys picking them up and of course you're charging and stuff. I don't know that we've had an issue of any and I'd have to ask Chief Arthur if he is aware of any, but how often would you guys come into Jenks, and you're already here, but how often do they come in and at least pick those up or check on the things like that?
Our operations lead manager lives in Jenks, and so it's sort of natural that he's kind of taking care of Jenks first and last on his way home. In terms of the Tulsa capacity of all the scooters that are there, we're there we're on Guthrie, 202 South Guthrie, there all day long, 8-10 hours a day. Obviously, weekends are concentrating a little bit more, but a lot of it is based on the previous night's activity. Provided that juicers don't do their job, maybe it's Super Bowl Sunday, they didn't come out. We're the ones that have to go up. If not, then those scooters don't be put in the next day since they're not charged. In terms of being knocked over, I can't account for how our competitor is doing things, but it's a big pet peeve of ours to see this. And Tulsa tends to be very windy and a little bit hilly. So what happens is scooters can knock over. We've found that this next generation of scooter that we've come out with, we originally launched with a different scooter. Kickstands were similar to our competitors. And so far our scooters are fine. Not falling over as often as they used to, but ultimately because it doesn't look well, we definitely are out there. Our vans are making at least 4 or 5 rounds, which means they fill up a van of like 50 scooters, 30, 40, 50 scooters, they come back and drop them off and go back into place. So
having an addition or having up to the 100 here, it's not going to put a burden on you guys. If it's, I know if it's something's going on and you bring more in, then obviously you have to accommodate for that. I guess it's just making sure that it's not going to litter the streets or litter the yards or tower. I know you can't help what a rider does. They dump them wherever, but it's just.
The beauty of, I guess, the Jenks fleet is that it is, when riders ride, it's concentrated, as you can imagine, from the river, maybe to here at most, distance-wise. Tulsa, because of the nature of the city, even though a scooter is deployed in downtown Tulsa, because our scooters aren't elsewhere in Tulsa, we find that oftentimes folks will come through and pick up our scooters, the truck, and then drive them out to some other place. But they're renting them and paying for them, so that's fine. So there's a lot more of this spread scooters. The worst thing that could happen for a Jenks scooter is that it ends up in Tulsa. In that case, it's in Tulsa, so although it's in a different city, it's still something we can handle. So keeping Jenks clean, clutter-free is easy. And if things get out of hand, and I can imagine with potentially another vendor, more scooters, or at least two different vendors trying to compete over a similar area, I would be more than happy to discuss zoning, and of course, maybe even more or less approved areas, so that there's no confusion between us and other vendors in the future. The last thing you want is an unneeded amount of scooters in one spot where there used to only be 5 lines, and now there's potentially 10, 5 and 5. So
But you get a bad name because they're blaming you for somebody else's scooter.
at the end of the day, the average person looks at a bird scooter, a lime scooter, or even a lot more what you see nowadays, personally owned scooters, as the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions or comments from Mr. Greenleaf? Okay. Any objections from Chief Arthur? Okay. All right. So that being said, if there's no more comment, we'll close this to the council. Thank you, Mr. Greenleaf. And we will entertain a motion for item number 3.
Make a motion, we approve.
We have a proper motion for item number 3 from Councilor Murray and a proper second from Vice Mayor OJ. Vote, please.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Kalen,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes. Item number 4 is request to approve the emergency clause for ordinance number 1552, making it effective immediately upon passage. Is there a motion to approve item number 4, the emergency clause?
Motion to approve.
We have a proper motion, and is there a second? And we have a proper second. Let's vote, please.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Kalen,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes. Item number 5 is request to award a professional engineering contract for the Jenks Transportation Master Plan to Traffic Engineering Consultants Incorporated out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the amount not to exceed $159,685. Funding for the same is included in the existing fiscal year 2021 budget and account number 32-521-5393, also known as Fund 32, Street Maintenance Traffic Study and Signalization Master Plan. This is our city engineer, Mr. Cloyd. Thank you, sir. On page 100, if you're excitingly following along, which I don't think anybody is. 100.
Mr. Mayor, city councilors, staff. In 2019, a pavement condition assessment was conducted, and that was to assess what is the current condition of the streets around the city of Jenks. And that's one aspect of putting together a pavement management plan. And when I say putting together a pavement management plan, I'm talking about how do we decide which streets do we really need to maintain or upgrade first? And how wide do they need to be? Those kind of questions come to our mind, and just understanding what the condition of the existing street is not the whole story. We need more information. Other aspects to consider would be congestion relief. I mean, what are our traffic volumes in certain areas, or certain areas busier? Looking at safety, where have we had the most accidents, anticipated growth. Those are all things that just looking at the pavement in certain areas doesn't really tell us that. So what we need to help us with that is a transportation master plan. And that's what I'm proposing here. What the transportation master plan would do in this case is it would look at both near-term and long-term scenarios. In the near term, what we'd be looking at is defining specific improvements that need to be made. And we can include those in our short-term capital improvement plan. This is one of the feeding things, the inputs that goes into that capital improvement plan. It's just like with our wastewater system and our wastewater treatment plant master plan, those were very good feeding documents to help us decide what do we need to improve in the next 5, 10, 20 years. This would do a similar thing. It also looks out to the next 25 years, so looking at the long-term forecast. So it would look at things like where are the next hotspots going to be, and where are those deficiencies going to come up in our transportation plan. Another thing that this plan will also do is help us look at our signalization around town. Where we have signals, is the signal equipment that we have the best equipment? Do we need to upgrade that equipment? Maybe we're not using the current equipment that we have in the right way. Maybe the timing needs to be changed. Those kind of things. And maybe we should have a plan around routine checking of the timing. Anyway, all of those questions can be answered with the transportation master plan. The timing of this plan, what we did, let me back up. What we did is we reached out to a professional service known as traffic engineers consultants. We've asked them to provide research, data collection, analysis on this master plan, and they provided the quote that you have in your materials there, or proposal, I'm sorry. And it also outlines the different tasks that they would do as part of their master plan. John Eshelman is here from that firm. But one of the things I want to talk about before I kind of open it up to questions for myself or Mr. Eshelman is let you know that as stated in the memo, the longest task is probably collecting data. So data collection, traffic counts, that'll take the first 2 months. And then the remaining 7 months would be for the other items that would be needed to develop that master plan, covering those different items that I kind of touched on in my previous sentences. So with that, I'd like to open up to questions from you for either myself or Mr. Eshelman.
Mr. Cloyd, did we go through an RFP process to locate TEC, or?
We did not. This is a professional service. So we identified someone that we knew that does this, and we asked them for a proposal on services.
Do you have any past experience with traffic master plans? You personally?
I do not.
Carr?
Not with master plans, Mayor, but we have used traffic engineering consultants on a number of projects. They're involved on the Elm Street project. They've been involved on other projects around town for other consultants.
Do you remember the last time, has the city ever, have we ever done this before in your recent memory?
No.
Okay. So if we approve this today, how long does this, we get this results in a year? So how long is it going to be before the next council has to look at something like this again? Are we getting 10 years worth here, 20 years worth?
Well, what we're looking at is a plan that will help us to look out for the next 25 years.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions from council on the right? Vice Mayor Roger?
So this is also taking into consideration, if I read this correctly, all new developments over the next 25 years, housing additions, any businesses.
Those that we can anticipate, foresee, I mean, looking at undeveloped land and how it's zoned, all of those things I think would come into play as we're looking at future hotspots, areas that may not be improved now, but you know, this could develop to be this, or it's zoned for that. So we need to anticipate those kind of volumes in the future.
Well, along that line of thinking, given all the colors on our comprehensive plan haven't quite been changed yet, are we doing this are we doing this prematurely, in your opinion, Mrs. Hilton? Because if he's looking at a map trying to predict the future 20 years down the road about traffic, and he's looking at hundreds of acres of farmland that in our mind in a year and a half that he doesn't know about are not going to be farmland. Is the timing right for this, in your opinion?
Yes, I think it's an outstanding time to do it. Those parcels do have a designation that we've predetermined. Doesn't mean that, as you know, it doesn't mean that's how they will develop, but they can look at that comprehensive plan and know that we expect these acres to develop as medium intensity, single family residential, which equals 3 dwelling units per acre or whatever. And then to go by that, they could actually use that document to help estimate the 25% of land we have to choose.
You're tracking on my question, right? You know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're also looking at things like potential South Tulsa Bridge, those things that we know that are key hotspots that are coming up, and how would that development affect the rest of the traffic flow? Okay. So all of those things that we know about or can anticipate right now, that's all going in the mix for developing this master plan.
Any questions from council on my left?
I'm looking at page 102, and it says you will notice in this paragraph that collecting traffic count data at 47 study intersections, et cetera, et cetera. It's to be done by using video cameras. And I'm kind of on the same page with some of the questions by the council so far as right now with our 111th Elwood project, kind of jamming things up. It would be faulty data unless we kind of got that cleaned out, or they just have really high level analysis that can nail things down, which again, this is simply going off video data, in my opinion. So I'm kind of in the dark here on how this is going to be done and the timing also. So I just thought the light show that.
I'd like to turn that over to the gentleman to answer that question. Thank you. That's a good question.
Thank you, Mr. Cloyd. So you're talking about the timing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Sir, can you just give your first and last name for the?
John Eshelman, driving engineering consultants. I live at 6924 East 86th Street.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, the timing on data collection is key. And the closure of 111th and Elwood has disrupted lots of traffic patterns. And we don't want to count while that is closed. We don't want to count while there's any major construction, and we're not aware of any upcoming major project like that. Whether school is in session is another issue. And we haven't had detailed conversations with city staff. We've had general conversations. I would prefer to count when school is in session. I would prefer to count when Elwood is open and traffic has had a week or two to readjust to that being open. The data collection is a camera. It's like a fisheye camera that's mounted on one corner of the intersection that looks at the whole intersection. And it can video for the entire 24-hour period. Those video files are sent off to a software company that analyzes that video and sends us back traffic counts, lefts, throughs, and rights, every period of the day just like we had somebody out there manually counting, except we have the video files we can go back to and look at. We have accurate data throughout the day. So we have any unusual peaks covered. And that's an expensive process, but we need good data to do capacity analysis at 47 key intersections around the city. And without good data, it's not valid. And you're right, we need the schedule. We need to work on the schedule. We can't start tomorrow. To prove this, we're not going to start next week because we're not ready to say that things are normal, traffic is normal.
Any more questions for Mr. Eichelman?
Well, I guess that my comment would be is I would know 111th and Elwood right now is under construction. We passed the bond recently for Elm from 111 to 131st. And so that's going to be a major undertaking too. I don't know what the capacity of starting that is. Obviously, you would try to get what you can of that before that would start, so we wouldn't have to worry about that interfering like the other one. Right. No, exactly. So that's kind of where you're at. We want to get in between those major projects while traffic is as normal as possible.
And are you familiar with the Peoria Elm project?
Yes.
Okay. Does your proposal come with hundreds and hundreds of Excedrin migraine pills that we can all use while we're trying to deal with all this?
For me or for you?
For all of us. For 1, 2, 3. Who else lives out there?
TEC has been fortunate to work for the city of Jenks in the past. You may not know us. We're a small specialty firm. We design traffic signals. We do signal timing. We do traffic studies for developers. We've done a number of projects over the years for for Jenks. We worked a lot of times as sub-consultants to civil engineers. So Keith Marquardt is designing the Elm widening, and we are his sub-consultant to do all the signal work on Elm. We did the signal work for BKL at 111th at Elwood. And so we've done a lot of work behind the scenes in Jenks over the years. And you never heard of us, but.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Eichelman?
So the 47 intersections, you think that covers? Just curious. I'm new, so.
47 intersections is all the section line arterial roads. It's all the freeway on and off ramps. It's a few major collectors, like out by Jenks Elementary from 96 to 91st.
I think it's
and it's so throughout the city and the borderline streets of the city is how we came up. There's the map. It's 47 dots on there. If they're solid, they're a traffic signal. If they're an open circle, it's a multi-way stop. In the downtown area, we just have a few key intersections on the major collectors downtown. But 47 is the total number of key intersections we consider need to be evaluated.
Good. Any more questions for Mr. Eichelman? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'm sorry, Councilor Murray, one more.
Mine's more off the cuff, but with this, is there a chance you could throw in a signal at 121st and Elwood?
You can disregard that question, Mr. Eichelman.
Thought I'd throw it out. It's part of the study.
Where?
121st and Elwood, a 4-way stop. There's a Tulsa County project at that intersection right now, isn't there?
Yes.
That's
going to be
actually
signalized.
Yeah.
It is. But I thought I would ask because it's part of the study. Yeah, you're right. All the borderline intersections right now, all the borderline intersections around Jenks are included. The borderline streets, for the most part, I think, are maintained and operated by Tulsa County. 121st and Elwood is on that map. But Tulsa County has a project going were involved in that project too, doing the signal work. But, and 121st, at US 75, I think Glenpool claims those as their signals and maintains them. So but we think there's a benefit to the city of Jenks to evaluate the perimeter borderline intersections, even if you're not responsible for fixing it. If you know what the issues are and where the hot spots are, you know who to maybe lean on to work on those borderline intersections.
Are you in a position, to Councilor Murray's question, to give us an idea when signalization on 121st Millwood might be complete? Anybody?
I haven't heard any progress on that project for a long time. It's been a long time since I worked on it, and I don't know the status.
This discussion started when I was the HOA president in Bennington Place a long time ago. So there's still not a traffic light there.
Yeah.
Call your friends at Tulsa County. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
And on that, the latest information.
You have another question?
Alex,
Well,
Tulsa
okay.
County is, I put in my monthly report, so that schedule that's there is the latest to be received from Tulsa County.
Yeah. Any questions for Mr. Cloyd?
Well, I don't know who can answer this, but I do have questions because I was looking here on the map and I can't tell, and I was looking up there and I can't tell because I can identify all the main arteries and things like that. But then I can't tell if that's Bank Street or down in Senco Edition, because I see the creek, I see 101st. So I can't tell by the dots here, because 101st runs parallel to the creek. And I can't tell if that's Main Street or exactly what.
The congestion of dots that are north of the Creek Turnpike, that's Main Street. It's on either side of Main Street, I believe. And it's not right on Main, but it's, I think in some areas it's also one block north and south.
At the signal right out here, Main Street, and Beaver, I think is the next signal. There's two signals on the road right here, Main is on. And then the signals on the east end of Main coming off the bridge and so forth overall.
Okay. They were just so.
Yeah.
And like jelly time.
Yeah, they're tight, small scale, but you want to get the street coming across the bridge and then splitting Main every day all the way through and B past the high school and so forth.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Cloyd? Nice. For a motion to approve item number 5.
I'll make that motion that we approve item number 5.
We have a proper motion by Councilor Murray and a proper second by Councilor Klein. Let's vote, please.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes. Item number 6 is request award of amendment number 1 to the TIF number 4 South James Water Main Extension Design with Tulsa Engineering and Planning Associates Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $8,500. Funding for the same to be paid by the Vision 2025 surplus funds. This is page 110 in your packet. Mr. Cloyd.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilors, staff. In March 2019, the City of Jenks entered into an agreement with Tulsa Engineering and Planning Associates to provide civil design of water and the sanitary sewer line from 114th Street and South James. This is the south end of the Jenks Landing area, and extending that to the south to 121st Street. The cost for that initial contract was $35,831.75. This contract has been, they basically used all the money in this contract, and they've done that by doing preliminary plans, going through various iterations on where to extend these utilities. This is one of the situations where we run into sometimes on, okay, do we extend utilities first and then hope it develops, or do we develop first and then we extend utilities so that we miss the buildings? Because we don't want to extend a utility And then a developer comes in and says, that utility is right where I wanted to put this building, but we didn't know what your vision was for that project. So at this point, we're kind of going along the scheme of, let's let the development come in first and then let's work around that development. So this is a scenario where we've gone through different iterations, used up the engineering fees for that. However, we've also recently had a development that's come in on the north side of 121st Street. I think the property is owned by Waco Irrevocable Trust. I forget the name of the development itself, but it's a commercial development. And we're working with that development because the owner of that development also owns all of that large land that's just to the, I guess, if you know where the rural county water office is there on 121st Street, it's west of that. So we're working with them to try to get easement to bring that water line down through there on the edge of their property to that development and then down to 121st Street. So we have a proposed alignment that we have shown this developer and property owner. They're happy with that and they're working with us to get that easement. So this $8,500 basically is taking that alignment, finishing out the design, getting the necessary DEQ permits and all that to actually put this water line in. The $8,500, what would happen, the way I understand this is it would come from other monies that have been allocated for maybe construction or some other part within that amount that was allotted to this. So we would be shifting funds, but we have to get approval from the city council before we go forward with this. Are there any questions?
So, yeah, question, Mr. Shrout. Why would this not be on the consent agenda? Is it because it's a contract amendment, or why could you not approve this? Just curious. Or anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more for your information and the modification of the original contract.
Okay. Okay. Very well. Any questions from on the right from the council for Mr. Cloyd? No questions. Any questions on the left? Councilor Murray.
So then this is still just going into design and civil process of it. It's not actually construction or any of that. That's going to be a whole other.
There is money that's allocated for that within the Vision 2025 fund, but this is not part of that. Now, we'll have to shift some money from one of the other tasks within that and make it construction, but it's not part of construction.
Okay, so this is just so looking at the plan and looking at everything else. So that's what I was. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cloyd from council? Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion to approve item number 6?
So moved.
We have a proper motion from Vice Mayor Ogier, and we have a proper second from Councilor Murray. Let's vote, please.
Murray? Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Kalen?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes. Item number 7, let's vote to enter executive session to engage in confidential communication between a public body and its attorney pursuant to Title 25, Section 307B4, concerning pending claim or litigation upon the advice of the attorney that disclosure will seriously impair the ability of the public body to process the claim or to conduct pending litigation. In this case, Sparkman Land LLC, Locker Momola versus JAA opioid litigation. Is there a motion on the floor to enter executive session? We have a proper motion and we have a proper second from Vice Mayor OJ. Let's vote, please.
Murray?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Kalen?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes, we will be back shortly.
Just for.
Okay, let the record reflect that the council has returned from executive session at 7:13 p.m. No votes were cast. That concludes item number 7. Other business, city manager's report, Mr. Shrout.
Mayor and all members of council, you have the weekly update in your packet. And Mayor, I defer to you. I think you had some items you wanted to discuss.
Sure, a couple things. Thank you to Councilor Klein. I didn't know today was International Firefighters Day. I've never even heard of it. But I would encourage the city to, whether it's communications or I would encourage the city to pay more attention to things like this. And I think there's a good opportunity for us to recognize, I think we already have, we do this for the police fairly often, but I didn't know there was an International Firefighters Day. So it's kind of late now, but me personally, I think if we could recognize these things yearly, where's this dude? Okay, I didn't know if it did. I didn't see it on social media, but me personally, and I know for Councilor Murray, this is the kind of day where I'd like to get up early and go make these guys breakfast or cook them dinner or do something. And I don't expect you guys to follow my lead on that, but it's an opportunity for us to honor these folks and to do a little something for them outside of the one that we recognize today. So I would encourage the city staff to add that to a list of things that I think would be really nice that we do going forward. So I won't read that because they all left, but they got all dressed up to haze their peer, but it's good to see them tonight. Either Mr. Shroud or Mr. Driscoll will brief the rest of the council on the fact that we took a trip to Oklahoma City last week. Let you guys brief that. I have passed out these are my initial thoughts. Did you guys get this little sheet called, starts off with capital projects? These are just my ideas on a couple of committees. You know, in the last 2 years I've been on council, I haven't been involved in a single committee. I don't even know that we have any other than a budget and finance committee that I know exists. But I think it's time we got work to do. And I think we need to get to work. So this is my first pass at some initial committees that I'd like for us to consider forming. I'm willing to consider some alterations to this plan, but for the most part, I look at these committees and I think rank has its privileges, guys, and there is seniority here. So I tried to keep some of our members that have been around the longest as chairs for these projects. I don't consider myself an expert in any of these things. I'm not chairing any of these committees. We do have alternates listed that I think can add value. Frankly, if we had the ability to have a committee with a quorum, I certainly would. But the challenge we have here is we only have a committee as a member is 3. So as you guys take on the responsibility to get these committees spun up, Vice Mayor Ogier, capital projects is already in the works. If Councilor Short can't make it that particular day, then let's communicate well and let's make sure Councilor Isbell can attend as an alternate. He is doing good work with INCOG, so he has that skill set that would make him a good alternate for this particular committee. Council Lynn, I don't need to give you any instruction on what you're doing with economic development. Take it, run with it. And I would encourage you to, we have civilians and we have other folks in the audience that really need to be a part of these committees. So this is yours. You guys were elected and you can do what you see fit with this. I would encourage Councilor Murray to bring in Mrs. Stoner and Commander Jackson to talk about things that we can do in public safety. I've had 2 calls this week from citizens complaining about X and Y and Z. And every time I call the city, there's nothing we can ever do about it. There's never anything we can usually do about anything. And it's because our ordinances are very, very, very old. And this is coming from our code enforcement officer. So we have an opportunity to kind of sit down with her and Commander Jackson. I'm just using this as an example and say, what are those code enforcement things that are driving us nuts? We got a trailer parked over across from a planning commissioner's house for years in the street. She's almost wrecked it. I got 3 friends who've almost crashed into it and we can't do anything about it. So I think it's time we create new ordinances or look at modifying these rules and to get law enforcement involved and look for creative ways to actually sink some teeth into this. I've got neighbors with $1 million house and 6 of them park in the grass. And we never seem to be able to do anything about it. And I would think certainly we can do something about it. So that's kind of the charge for you guys. Councilor Isbell's not here. Communications, Rodney, this is just something we can talk about. But the other day, Vice Mayor Ogier and I and Councilor Murray met with Mr. Carr and Mr. Shroud. We kind of talked about 2 things that I'd love to see. And I think improved communication is something that we all need to work on. And when I talk about communication, I'm talking about things like, how do our citizens communicate with us? I hear it over and over again. Hey, I've sent 3 emails, I've gotten no response. We need to find creative ways to solve those problems, work with our staff and our council to get to a place where we don't feel so on the hook to return emails quickly. We know our staff can handle these things. So come up with creative ways to do that. And you feel free to bring in anybody that you can if we can't get 3 counselors there. And I'm thinking Mr. Shrout would be good to have on that committee, and possibly even our IT guy. I think we might have to throw some IT solutions at this. There's got to be a way to communicate outside of Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, and what else is there? What else do we do?
We have the text that gets sent out related to emergencies, related to water breaks, related to.
So we have social media is the primary means of communication, and we have lots of people in Jenks that probably aren't involved in social media. So we need to find something outside of that. And the text program that he's talking about, I'd be curious to see how many of our citizens are actually engaged in a program like that. So I go to a lot of trade shows throughout the year for public safety and things of this nature. So I can help if you need help. But the bottom line here is this. I've been here 4 years. I get emails all the time. And the tone is this. I'm reaching out to you and I'm desperate because I can't get anybody to pick up the phone or email me back. So solve the problem and work with him and solve the problem. Okay. Mr. Shroud is our city manager. It's been over a year since you've had a review. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah.
So that's a disaster. So Councilor Lynn and Vice Mayor Ogier and Mr. Klein, I'm sure you've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of kids and teachers. Can you 3 set a time to get together? I think it's important. Councilor Lynn's been asking, what is our city manager's job description? I don't know if we have one, but I'm sure we can create one and we can beg, steal, and borrow from templates from cities around Tulsa County. But if you 3 can get together, create a format, let's get our city manager review. He deserves it. And frankly, we should never, it should never go on this long. So, and I apologize to you that I wasn't the help to make that happen during the last year or so. Frankly, it was an out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't invited to participate in the process, so I'm sorry it lapsed. But we need to get a review for our city manager right away. And like I said, this is a first pass. If you have any heartache about it, just let me know. Not tonight, and we'll move forward. But the goal here is we got a lot of work to do, and I think we have the right people here to do it. I mentioned, I think last week, the idea of getting off site for a little summit or a strategy session. I think I asked all of you to consider a vendor or consultants to help with that. I don't know if anybody has any ideas. I have spoken to the CEO, the Persimmon Group. They're a Tulsa-based firm, and they have clients that I think make sense. They've worked with the City of Tulsa, the City of Tulsa's Economic Development Committee, with Tulsa Technology Center. So they do have experience working in upper education or higher education and with city and county government. So I did have a conference call with the CEO last week to talk about the challenges of how does this work for us? And, how do I get all of you into one place in one room for 6 or so hours? I mean, it's an open meeting. We have to publish these meetings. So They're working to create a proposal that we can consider, because this is a cost. This is an expense and an investment in our future that I think is important. But hopefully I'll have something that I bring to you guys soon. And just to give you a taste of the flavor, because of the open meetings requirements, and because of the fact that I think most of us do still work for a living, you would expect something to, you would probably expect some online surveys that we would all fill out on our own time. So stuff that we can do whenever we're able, maybe even an online or a phone interview, a one-on-one with a consultant. And then we would have that retreat would probably be a 6-hour thing, maybe 7 hours at the most. I'm thinking, Friday or Saturday, whatever is doable. And I'm thinking about 15 of us. Obviously, Mr. Shrout would be there, and some of our senior staff members would need to be there as well. And the idea is that we understand each other's personality styles or leadership styles. And then we walk away with a strategic plan, a short-term and a long-term plan that kind of brings all this together in one place. And if we stack hands on it, well, that's even better. So I'll get back to you with more information as it becomes available and when I get that proposal. And last thing, there has been a few of you, and I won't name names, who have expressed an interest in moving our council meetings into under Robert's Rules of Order. It's not just a few of us, it's actually some influential people in our city have tried to mentor me into the idea that Robert's Rules of Order would be a good thing for us to learn and to deploy, if you will, into our council meetings. I told Mr. Shrout that I had a 4-hour drive home from Kansas City last week, and all I did was watch YouTube videos on Robert's Rules of Order, and it scared the crap out of me. So, and then after talking with Mr. Shrout just candidly the other day, he reminded me that there's a lot of potential red flags in doing that, and he's right. And the downfall of Robert's Rules of Order is if you don't do it well, there's going to be somebody in the audience who knows it well that calls you out on it, and I don't want to have to deal with that, because I remember we had a mayor a few years ago who had to deal with that quite often, and it's a tough thing to have a council member beat you down because you're not following the proper rules. But that being said, Vice Mayor Ogier and Councilor Murray and I did have an opportunity to discuss this with Mr. Shrout and Mr. Carr the other day. I think hopefully tonight you noticed a slight change in the tone and in the tempo. And what I would like to do is, I'm not a believer tonight that we need Robert's Rules of Order, but I do think we need some order, a higher level of decorum and professionalism. If you read Facebook comments from just prior to the election, the previous council took a little bit of a beating for the fact that we always interrupted each other, and it tended to look like we were bickering with each other, and people can't wait to speak. And I agree, and I will confess that I was part of the problem as well. So what I would like to do going forward is when we introduce an agenda item number, what you'll notice is I'll look to the right and I'll ask if any council members would like to be recognized. If you would like to speak, you can raise your hand, or you can give me an eye wink or whatever, whatever it is you need to do, just simply say yes. And I will recognize that council member. And then when that person is done speaking, and only when they're done speaking, I'll look to the left and ask the left side of the council if they care to be recognized. I'll recognize you. I will always recognize you by your title, Councilor Murray. And I would remind the council that this gentleman is a professional engineer. Mr. Carr, how long have you worked for the city of Jenks?
16 years.
His name is Mr. Carr. You don't even need to know his first name or his preferred nickname, which is Mr. Carr. Just kidding. This is Mr. Sauceda. He's a professional in his field. She's a professional. He's a professional, even for being under 40. And she's a licensed attorney who's passed a very difficult exam. So her name is Mrs. Nowlin. In the past, we've called her Teresa, Robert, Bobby. Everybody's got a nickname, and I think we can do better than that. So I would ask you guys to follow my lead and join us, and we can all hold each other accountable. Councilor Klein got elected a couple of weeks ago, and he deserves that respect, and we deserve to give you guys that same respect. So join us in raising the level of professionalism while we're here and while our mics are turned on, if you would. And if you disagree with me, do it later and you owe me a drink. All right, so that's all I have for this evening. Did we do general manager's report? We did
Generally, yeah.
generally?
I
I'm
would just
sorry,
say
I
that,
got lost.
that we,
Did I interrupt?
that House Bill 1566, which would allow the aquarium to keep this portion of the state sales tax they collect, did pass both the House, went to the Senate, passed that with amendments, went back to the House, was passed by the House last Monday and was signed by the governor today. And Josh, I don't know if you want to touch on our visit to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
But I think Representative Sims, had requested that you mention something, his thanks.
Yes,
Mr. Driscoll.
Representative Sims texted me earlier today, wanted to thank members of council, city staff, chamber leaders who went to the Capitol to advocate on behalf of this bill with Lieutenant Governor. The governor signed it today, so that big win. It's taken us, Representative Fred Jordan was a state representative the first time this was introduced, so this is a nice win and a long time coming. But we went to the Capitol last week. It was, I've lost track of the day.
Tuesday.
It was a Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah.
Councilor Lynn, Vice Mayor OJ, Mayor Box, excuse me, Councilor Short, myself, Mr. Farr, and Mr. Cloyd, and then Zach Thomas from our office. And we had a very long conversation about the state of the Highway 75 Main Street interchange. We were very frank with him. Councilor Lynn shared her thoughts and some of her concerns about it, and we shared some of our experiences. ODOT kind of shared some of their thoughts as well, and we had a very interesting moment in which they told us, from our perspective, from the chamber's perspective, our immediate need was for the on and off ramps to be repaired. They're in horrible shape, for lack of a more elegant phrase, and it's something we're hearing and we're talking to out-of-state companies looking at locating, especially in the gateway district and the property immediately adjacent to it. They're concerned about how their customers are going to get off the highway into the business. We were informed that there was a plan to fix the ramps in 2026, which did not go over well. I think the awkward silence was a pretty telling moment, but they did agree, and please jump in.
And that's all the ramps.
Gas.
Yeah, it was an unpleasant moment at time, but they are going to come down and look at it.
And that's all the ramps in the entire Highway 75 corridor, not just Jenks. And they don't really, it's on their plan for 2026, but there really is no actual
They
plan.
plan to look at it in 2026, so I think it's a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
So they did express that they would be here to look and examine the on and off ramps. And I think our plan is moving forward is going to be continue to keep pressure on, especially regarding that issue, but secondarily is looking at the long-term, the bridge. They informed us it was a slat bridge, structurally good shape. They did say there are things we could do to improve the appearance of it, which, yeah, it's a small win, but we'll take it as a win. But I thought it went well. I appreciate the council being there. The meeting Lieutenant Governor, as expected, was very friendly, very supportive of the measure.
And so we're just really thankful for Representative Sims and Senator Rogers and Representative Dills for taking the time. I've never really had that much time with them at the Capitol. Usually they are quite a bit busier, but I think it was a good trip.
Yeah, we got a great tour kind of behind the scenes and a few things on the House and Senate floors and looked around. Senator Dave Rader as well was the Senate author of the bill. So if you get a chance, you might send both Representative Sims and an email thanking them for what they're doing for what this bill is going to mean for Oklahoma, but for us here in Jenks in particular. And as far as ODOT, do we know when their next visit is? If they contact you yet?
We've got a meeting set up. About 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. So
Were you copied on the email today? Mr. Councilor Short replied to.
yes, Councilor
one of our
Short
citizens'
CC'd me on that.
Okay, so the timing is kind of perfect for all this. It seems like right when we start talking about an issue, people start to notice it. So maybe the rule here is maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
They were referencing, I think all of us shared the same sentiment when they were visible. Other, however many communities in the state was like, well, we're here today. So,
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a comment, Councilor Short?
Mr. Farr, I understand there's a meeting set up. Do you need any of the council to help press the interest? Or is that just a observation?
I want to keep this on an engineer to engineer basis right at the moment so I can try and figure out what ODOT is planning to do or thinking that they might do. At some point, we may need to have some more help. And I'll be sending out a summary of our meeting with ODOT to every one of you, so you can see what came out of it. And if you see anything that needs more attention, then we'll address that also. But right now, want to keep it on a professional level engineering discussion.
I think just for everyone's summary, I think it was very impressive that everybody on our side was spoke in the same voice. This is a safety issue, it is an economic development, it's the first impression you get of our city when you drive in from the west. It's embarrassing, to Josh's point, someone's wanting to come into our city and they lose a strut because they hit the ditch. That's not a good sign. And so, I personally, and I think I can speak for most of the council, I want to do whatever it takes to get that interchange safer, better looking, paint, whatever we have to do. I know our citizens will support us because they all say the exact same thing. You mentioned that intersection, and that's the first thing we all agree as citizens.
And I'd just like to thank you very much for your email on that that the lady had sent to you about the traffic. I immediately sent that over to Randall White at ODOT so that he could understand that this was not just a freak thing that we wanted. And if anybody else has any more information like that, please send it on. I will send it to ODOT again and keep pushing it in their face as much as we have to do. I appreciate the information.
And just for everyone's knowledge, Emily Johnson sent us an email, had 3 pictures of traffic during rush hour on Highway 75, parked in the side median, and there was a wreck, a 3-car wreck. And she just sent us a very heartfelt email about the safety factors. And then, you can go on from there. But
I neglected to mention Kent Clark, whose family owns Woodland West Animal Hospital in Pet Resort, was also there. He can speak firsthand. His business is right there. His customers and employees exit right there. And then a number of other businesses who shared their thoughts but weren't able to join, so we expressed those. But I think it was an effective use of time, and I think it was good for ODOT. I think, mentioned the council, then I ran into Secretary Gatz and just mentioned this as an issue. So if he sees me, it's Josh Force is going to gripe about the bridge. But when we get in front of some of these people, I think it's certainly more effective. So,
and on a complete side note, as a citizen of the state of Oklahoma, if you haven't been in the capital, you need to go see it. The renovations are complete except for the seal. It is remarkable, and that's been a long process. So
it is beautiful.
It is absolutely stunning.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. And thank you for responding to that email. It's very refreshing. No, that's somebody else can do it. Thank you very much. Okay, it is, the time is 7:35 p.m. I believe. Are we concluded with our business for the city council meeting? General manager's report, Mr. Driscoll. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a proper motion to adjourn and we have a proper second from Councilor Murray. Let's call the roll.
Murray? Yes. Klein?
yes.
Short?
Yes.
Sojak?
Yes.
Kalen? Mayor Box?
Yes, the record reflect we are adjourned at 7:36 p.m. This is a quick one, so we'll avoid the need for any bathroom breaks. It's called to order the Jenks Public Works Authority meeting. The time is 7:36 p.m.
Isbell? Murray? Here. Klein? Short? Here. Sojak?
Here.
Kalen?
Here.
Chair Box?
Here, let the record reflect Councilor Murray, or Trustee Murray, is absent this evening. Item number 1, consideration and appropriate action, consent agenda. Is there any motions to approve the consent agenda? Councilor.
Is it Murray?
Let the record reflect, Counselor Isbell is not in attendance tonight. Counselor Murray has been here all night. Thank you. Any motions to approve the consent agenda, item number 1?
Second.
We have a proper motion and a proper second by Counselor Lynn. Let's vote, please.
Murray? Yes. Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Kalen?
Yes.
Chair Box?
Yes. Item number 2, we will pull. Item number 3, request to approve lease of property located at 305 South Elm Street to CVP Jenks LLC. Authorize the city attorney to draft and negotiate a written lease agreement subject to the terms in the backup memo and to authorize chairperson to execute. This is page 42 in your packet, and we have Mrs. Teresa Nowlin. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Members of the authority. I will give you a brief introduction to this proposed lease agreement and then defer any questions about the development or the property itself to my colleagues. I was brought in kind of last minute, which is why we have a list of major terms. It's pretty extensive, so I think it really covers the meat of the lease that needs to be put into the format and at the boiler point. Obviously, any significant changes in the terms will come back to you, but I believe we've got the key terms covered. There is currently a lease on this property, but it has a lot of things that need to be changed. We needed to consent to the assignment. It is with the city instead of the JPWA, and the JPWA owns the property. So we're proposing a new lease for the new developer and the new tenant on this property. This property is going to be used as a drive-through coffee establishment, and the lease agreement would recognize that it needs to be used for some kind of drive-through, or Ms. Hilton has stated our code calls it a drive-in, but it is the same thing as drive-through. It would be for 15 years with a possible 3 5-year extensions. 15 years is the length of the current lease, or the lease, the upcoming lease to Dutch Brothers Coffee at $1,500 a month, although they could retain the option to pay us annually or in lump sum. There is a sewer line on the property, and the lease needs to recognize that. And we're going to, upon platting, there's going to be an easement that will be dedicated, that will be established.
And you said 1,500 a month. It's 1,500 a year. Yes.
Apologize, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I mean, the previous council agreed on the actual use, for some sort of parking. That was the original lease. And the reason that we're not inclined to want to sell it is that there is a sewer line that goes through there. And if we were to sell it, then we'd still require an easement, which would just be complicated. And so instead, we feel a lease is a better option. And then we still have in the lease document, we would still have access. We would call out where the sewer line is in that lease document and have access. If there's something wrong with the line that needs to be worked on, we would not be responsible for replacing the pavement. We think this is a good use of the property. We're excited that Dutch Brothers they're ready to get going as soon as potentially June or July. I think the flooring company that had the lease previously obviously hadn't moved on it, although they did tear down Sandy's building. We think this is a good use. It'll be a good addition to Elm Street, and I think it'll work well with both the park and the Case building to the south. So, and we worked very quickly on this. I think that maybe even after the last council meeting, Dutch Brothers sent an email to some council members, and their intent was to get this on this agenda. And negotiating leases usually takes a little bit longer, and I appreciate staff's working very quickly to get this, at least the key terms, ready for this agenda. So
Any questions or comments from council to my right? Mayor, I saw your hand a minute ago. Were you plotting slides, or did you have a question?
No, he said whoever the council member, they sent the information to.
Oh.
I don't know if I received it. But
Okay.
everybody else did. I just dispersed it to everybody I could.
Counselor Lynn? Any questions from the council to my left? Okay, just curious, the $1,500, where did that number come from?
It was the amount of the previous lease, and I believe it was calculated based on an appraisal that the previous developers did.
Yeah, in lieu of paying the appraised price, we said we'll lease it to you for that price.
$1,500 per year.
Yeah.
It was a 30-year lease.
Yeah, and it was something like $30,000 was, I think, the appraised value. And it is flood, I believe it's floodplain, so,
It's not a sizable lot, it's not used.
Yeah.
1,500 bedroom.
It's,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's reasonable.
And that's the other thing, I don't believe it's its own lot or parcel, it's a part of the Veterans Park parcel, so we'd have to do some sort of lot split. Yeah,
Right.
Really nothing better to do with this parcel then. Okay. All right. Very well. Is there any motions to approve item number 3?
I move to approve.
Motion to approve from Vice Mayor Ogier and a proper second from Councilor Klein. Let's vote, please.
Murray? Yes. Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Kaden?
Yes.
Chair Box?
Yes. Item number 3 is approved. Any other business? General Manager's report.
Chair and all members of the authority, you have the engineering projects weekly update in your packet. I will mention that the Providence Hills crack sealing project is almost complete. I know authority member Murray sent an email from a resident that had some questions about whether or not this crack should have been sealed further. And our infrastructure inspector is on site reviewing the crack sealing that's been done and has some spots that the contractor needs to go back to and address. In addition to that, we are now under contract on the library property. I believe we have 60 days to close from the time of the signature, which might have been sometime last week. Engineering staff has contracted with Terracon to do a environmental review of the site that should take 10 business days. So we are moving forward on that.
Councilor.
Yes.
Mr. Shred, I'm still checking on the address that had been asked on that. And the gentleman that sent that to me, that sent a note to the lady that sent it to him, and he was waiting for a response. So I'm still trying to get that.
Well, under the idea that, yes, sir, Councilor.
Real quick, relative to the library property, is there a way, once we're closed, to publicly, in a positive way, notice our citizens that we own it now, that something's changed?
Yes, there is.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you asked.
Something to tell everyone, something has changed here. Good.
Mhm.
So I get more questions about what's going on with that land. And I think it'd be very good for everybody in this room to be able to promote the fact that this council, this city staff has executed on this land and something's changed. So if there's anything we can do from a communications perspective, marketing perspective, I would be 100% for it.
Great idea. Did I share my thoughts with you last week on that? So in less than a week, my niece had her reveal party, so I'll be a great uncle. And then a few days later, a friend of mine posted some pictures how they're the proud new owner of this very, very special car. And I started thinking about, that's interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen, I'm the proud new owner of, usually it's the house. So here's my thoughts. When we're done with this contract, I would like every one of us and every one of you and everyone on the city staff and everybody that loves Jenks to assemble on that lot. It would be nice if we had a big sign that said the proud new owner of how many acres is it?
4.2.
4.2 acres of proud real estate on Main Street, Jenks. I'm not going to make the sign, but it would be great if somebody did. And I think it'd be really cool if we can get Commander Jackson to fly his little drone up a couple hundred feet and take a couple pictures of us standing in our new lot as the proud owners of our new baby. and then we're going to have it grow up, be big and strong. And, you know, I'm not a marketing genius, but at this particular point, anything that we do that shows Simon or developers that we're open for business, that we're excited to be open for business, that our city council will be flexible, we'll look for opportunities to compromise on ways to be creative, to bring business to Main Street. I just don't think there's any really bad ideas right now. Something is better than nothing. So if you guys think my idea is foolish, please tell me afterwards in private, but I think it's not so bad. A really cool picture from 300 feet from a drone would be kind of cool. Plus we get the cops involved and they get to fly their little toy and we all have a good day. So
Katie, you work on this.
I got it.
good. Or if you don't like the drone idea, when the ladder goes up on the fire truck, well, I've been told that there's not a civilian in Jenks that's ever been higher on a ladder than me. Greg Murray is second place. I've been to 110 feet. He went a little bit shorter. If you'd like to get up to 112 feet with your camera, we can make that happen. You got to climb it first. We're not flying you up there. That'd be a really good picture.
No, I think you guys could spell out Jenks.
Seriously.
I'm not the creative one in the group, so I'll leave that to you and your staff to figure out how we can make some kind of, you know, it's like the vision of when, you know, the airplane flies over the island and you write lost or help in the sand. Let's just write something.
Well, you gotta be careful with that. I'm gonna have to say.
I'm not saying help or
No,
lost.
but remember when we did this at Hilty and how long it took us to spell out Hilty?
Well, yeah, but
With-
we had to do that. We're gonna let,
It's not
she's
as
gonna
easy
handle it.
as it sounds. I'm just saying, and we were all adults.
Well,
It
if
wasn't
you
like-
Cursive.
So if you can't do the signs, then do the little social media hashtags.
Yeah.
Proud owners of 4.2
I'll
acres,
Photoshop it.
4.2 acres of joy. And let's let the world know that we have an opportunity on Main Street. We control our destiny. Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, sir.
What is the latest projected date on 111th and Elwood? I know we've heard from end of June to sometime this month. Have we got any more current numbers, dates?
I don't know that it's been updated lately, but we're talking probably mid-June. But with the rain,
That's an update. No, yeah, that's true.
keep raining, it'll probably be July.
That is Oklahoma, so yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can we make that public so I don't have to keep answering phone calls?
Yeah, our next update goes out this week.
Excellent. That's not one of those updates I'm sure you're looking forward to, but you know what? We went all night and we didn't get to hear from Mrs. Hilton in her patent leather red shoes one time. Sad.
The miracle.
Any other questions, council or staff, before we adjourn? Great. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a proper motion? Do we have a second? All right, let's vote, please.
Murray?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Kalen?
Yes.
Chair Box?
Yes, we are adjourned at 7:50 PM. Have a great evening.